And you see Liverpool going back in for Sangar. You say back in, I'm not sure we're ever in for Sangar. We've been linked to him, but I don't know. The truth is, I don't know. The only one I can say with any degree of certainty, I feel comfortable that Liverpool will get a deal done if the selling club are willing to play ball is Thuram. After that, I'm guessing. Thuram's an interesting one, though, because we know that the Nice owner's a bit distracted at the minute. He's busy trying to buy Manchester United. Nice are putting out there in the media that they don't want to sell, but I don't think that's going to be the case. There's talk that they wanted to hold on to him for another year. That's been doing the rounds as well. But I think it's been made clear to them that he'd like to move. His agent has been pictured, as you've seen, speaking with Nice or at the Nice offices. The player has been pretty much flirting with Liverpool openly. So I think that's a deal we can get done. And I think, I'd love to gauge your opinion in the chat, but I think it's a deal we all feel comfortable with. Is that fair enough to say? I think I'm certainly fully hyped up now on board the Thuram train, but I'm not on board the Gravenberch train. I want that third signing to be an undoubted yes. McAllister was a yes. As soon as you heard that signing, you were like, perfect. Experience, right age bracket, little bit of nous about him. Won a World Cup with Argentina. Perfect signing. Great value. Nothing wrong with it. The Thuram one, brilliant as well, but that's the roll of the dice. For me, that's the one we're allowed to have a roll of the dice on. It's an educated roll of the dice. It's an educated risk. But Lavia, I don't get it. I don't get why we'd potentially spend upwards of 40 million for a player who isn't there yet, is very highly thought of course, has been relegated with Southampton, and we have competition because it looks like Chelsea, it looks like maybe United and certainly Arsenal are in that conversation, and I just don't get the point of us maybe getting into a bit of a transfer battle there when we've openly said we don't want to. Now, if you move on to Gravenberch, like I said earlier on, the word from Bayern is they ain't selling. At least for this particular moment in time, they've no priority, no need to sell. So that's one that I feel will drag on over the summer. And obviously Bayern are probably sitting back and waiting to see how Gravenberch gets on in the Euros. If he's a particularly good Euros, maybe they feel like they can get a bit more from. If he's a particularly poor Euros, then maybe they feel like, okay, that maybe justifies us potentially moving him on if he wants to move on. That's kind of where we're at. Like, it's difficult to know after that. Lavia is just a kid, said JC. Right now, he wouldn't even get into the Blue Nose team, said Mark. Yeah, it's weird, right? Like, it is weird. I don't get it. Like, you're 2/3 of the way there. And with Gravenberch, at least we could look at it and go, it's cheap. So, whether we think that's right or wrong, it's cheap. If it's 25, 30 million, it's cheap. But if you're looking at Lavia, you've still got the risk factor, but you've got an increased price, which puts increased pressure, of course, on those young shoulders. And there's also the factor of, I still don't know if he's good enough or not. Has to be Barella, said Owen. I'm with you, Owen. It just makes sense. Barella, I think, would love to come and play at Anfield. And look, if you want me to really, really go tinfoil hat here, we just gave up the number 23 today to Lucho. And we know what number Barella likes to wear. And that number is now available at Liverpool. And that is absolutely potentially tinfoil hat stuff of the highest order. But it's also, we barely need Barella. Barely? Surely you meant to write the word really. And you got auto-corrected, but barely? I think Barella would just sort the midfield. Like, Barella, McAllister, and then you have the opportunity to go with either Jones if you want to, obviously by Cecic or Fabinho if you wanted to play in the 6. If you wanted to go to 3-2-2-3 again, it gives you options in midfield. It just ticks a lot of boxes. For me, Barella should be a no-brainer if the player is willing to make the move, and I really do feel like he is open to it. And I feel like Liverpool are long-term admirers of him. But we've also seen this story play out numerous times where Liverpool are interested FC or Liverpool are monitoring FC. And look, we don't even have the competition now from Newcastle, who've moved on and went with Tonali. So there is even less competition for the signing. I think if you were looking at the Premier League, Chelsea, maybe the other one. Liverpool versus Arsenal for Romeo Lavia, as per Fabrizio Romano. They can fucking have him. I mean, is there anybody who really wants Lavia? Like, because I know I'm a bit of a miserable old sod, but it just doesn't tickle the old nutsack, you know? It doesn't do anything for me. So Lavia is really good, said George. Is he though? Like, is he potentially good, George? Or is he really good? If he's potentially good, I can't get where you're coming from, but and I'm not holding Southampton getting relegated against him because there's plenty of experience of players who went on to be well who've come from relegated teams. Like look at Andy Robertson for us, or potentially James Maddison leaving Leicester City. So it does happen that relegated teams have good players, but I don't know, 40, 45 million for a 19-year-old kid with limited experience. I don't know. Doesn't feel worth the money to me. If he wasn't any good, then some of the top six club wouldn't be after him for fuck's sake. I mean, firstly, drop the fucking attitude, Jamie, with the for fuck's sake. I can give you many, many examples of top six clubs who've gone after bags of shite before that haven't worked out. So the fact that, I'll flip it on its head for you, right? Using your analogy, why is nobody else after Ryan Gravenberch then? Why are Liverpool, prioritising him and nobody else is interested for a player that could be worth only 25 or 30 million? So I feel like people should be hammering the door down to Bayern Munich there. So for me, it just feels a bit weird. To be fair, Gravenberch against Portugal under 21, he was really good. I'm not saying Ryan Gravenberch hasn't got potential, my friend. I'm just saying, he's cheap, he's young, and he's potentially good. And I'm worried as to why Bayern Munich may sell him. And I'm worried about, I don't say his attitude, but I'm worried about him living up to that potential. It concerns me. And that's before we had that discussion as well about the fact that Bayern, at this minute, are saying they don't want to sell. What do you think happens to Harvey next season, said Panda Paws. I think Harvey Elliot isn't getting the credit from Liverpool fans that he deserves. And I know people might think that that's a bit of a divisive statement for me to make. But just listen to our manager's words on the stuff that we don't see, like the pressing stats of Harvey Elliott. That's why he's been getting game time last season. He set a record, I think, for counter pressing in one of the games. I think it was the Wolves game, maybe. Whichever was the game before we played United and beat them 7-0. That was the one that Jurgen Klopp said, this is why he's in the team. His counter pressing is phenomenal. So I think Harvey Elliott's fine. The only issue I have is probably the same issue that you guys have. Where's his position? That's the one thing I don't know. Like, is he going to be a future midfielder? Is he going to be a future right winger? Is he going to operate somewhere maybe just in behind the strikers? I don't know, but I guess that's down to Jurgen to figure out. But I think Elliott's going in the right direction. Craig, if it was decided that Harvey is a right winger, would you let him replace Mo long term? No. I don't see, and look, I'm so fucking deluded with this, mate, that in my head, Ben Doak is that successor to Mohamed Salah. I think we see Mo stay for 2 more years, then maybe move to Saudi Arabia or somewhere else for one last chapter in his career. And at that stage, you would hope that Ben Doak is ready, because he looks a real talent. But there is no guarantees with younger players making that step forward. It can be 1 step forward, 2 step backs at a time, making that progression. Look at Curtis Jones, a really good example again. Went off the boil because of injuries and a lack of game time and a few other things for quite a while, but had a phenomenal end to the season. And he and Liverpool deserve massive credit for that. And a lot of us, and I definitely include myself in this, have to hold our hands up and say, firstly, didn't see that coming, but also fair play to the lad.